1 year ago today, the United States launched the most aggressive trade action in a century. They called it Liberation Day. The goal was simple: use universal tariffs to crush the deficit and force manufacturing back to American soil. One policy to rewire the global order. But here is what the data actually shows. The U.S. goods trade deficit for 2025 hit $1.24 trillion. That is not the number from before the tariffs. That is the number after. Manufacturing didn't return. It shed 77,000 net jobs in 12 months. The dollar didn't strengthen. It slid 4%. The country that won Liberation Day isn't America. And despite the headlines, it isn't China either. This was a strategic positioning war. And the positions are now locked in. The theory of Liberation Day was built on a single premise: that the sheer scale of the American market could be used as a weapon to dictate global terms. Domestically, the tariffs were a masterclass in political optics. They promised a simple solution to a complex systemic decay, resonating with a workforce that felt abandoned by globalization, even if the math didn't hold. The U.S. had been here before. In 1930, the Smoot-Hawley Tariff Act attempted to protect American farmers by raising duties on over 20,000 goods. The result was a global trade collapse that deepened the Great Depression. History doesn't repeat, but it certainly rhymes. In 2025, the weaponization of trade ignored the reality of modern interdependence, assuming that 19th century tactics could solve 21st century problems. When the cost of production in America remained structurally higher than the cost of a 17% tariff elsewhere, manufacturers didn't feel patriotism. They felt the numbers, and the numbers pointed east. Average tariff rates jumped from 2.5% to a consumer-facing peak of 17%. By early 2026, the pressure on American consumers forced a partial rollback to an 11% framework. The leverage was spent. The rollback wasn't a negotiation victory. It was a capitulation to domestic inflation. Consumers felt the tariff before manufacturers felt the benefit. This is Voice on Pages, where we decode the hidden logic behind global power, capital, and institutions. Metric 1. The goods deficit. Despite the most aggressive protectionism in modern history, the goods trade deficit remained essentially unchanged at $1.24 trillion. Import volumes didn't vanish, they just changed labels. The flow of goods was diverted, but the structural imbalance remained identical to the pre-tariff era. The deficit didn't shrink because import substitution failed. You cannot simply flip a switch and rebuild a domestic supply chain for electronics or machinery that took decades to outsource. Instead, American companies simply paid the tax and passed the cost down. Metric 2. Manufacturing jobs. The Bureau of Labor Statistics confirmed a net loss of 77,000 manufacturing positions between April 2025 and March 2026. Tariffs on intermediate inputs like steel and aluminum made American finished goods too expensive to compete in the global market, leading to domestic contraction rather than expansion. Metric 3. The dollar. The DXY index fell from 105 to approximately 100, a 4% slide. As the world diversified away from tariff-exposed assets, the greenback's absolute dominance began to fray. This wasn't just a market fluctuation. As we discussed in our analysis of the $50 trillion exit, institutional capital began repricing American risk. That DXY move is the market's way of saying the structural premium of the dollar is no longer guaranteed. Metric 4. The reversal. The forced rollback from 17 to 11% was a silent admission. You cannot tax your way to prosperity when your economy is structurally dependent on global supply chains you no longer control. The fifth metric is the most personal: consumer impact. The tariffs weren't absorbed by foreign exporters. They were a massive sales tax on American households. From appliances to automobiles, the average family saw a structural increase in the cost of living. While Washington focused on tariffs, Beijing focused on inputs. Rare earth controls expanded from 7 elements to 12 in 6 months. China's rare earth controls follow the same asymmetric leverage playbook we covered in the energy war. Control the input, control the outcome. By restricting the specialized materials required for EV motors and defense systems, China turned the trade war into a structural bottleneck for American high-tech manufacturing. By late 2025, Beijing pivoted from blanket bans to selective licensing. By issuing rare earth export permits only to companies and nations that maintained strategic alignment, China turned its mineral dominance into a high-stakes diplomatic bargaining chip. Simultaneously, China redirected its trade. Exports to Africa surged 25.8%. Trade with ASEAN hit $930 billion. China didn't collapse, it repositioned. Its GDP held at 4.8%. That ASEAN corridor isn't just about new markets. Chinese intermediate goods are shipped to Southeast Asia, minimally processed, and re-exported to the US. The label says Vietnam, but the capital remains Chinese. This redirection allows Beijing to maintain its industrial floor while bypassing the direct tariff wall. The real winners were those who sat in the middle. India's exports to the US hit a record $86.5 billion in fiscal year 2025, an 11% increase while the world was supposedly closing its borders. Apple India assembled 55 million iPhones, a 53% jump. India utilized the tariff gap to become the new primary factory for Western tech, securing an 18% tariff framework in early 2026. The expansion was fueled by the production-linked incentive scheme. By offering direct financial payouts for local manufacturing, India turned a defensive global shift into an offensive domestic gain, with Tata and Foxconn leading the charge. Vietnam saw a similar surge, with exports to the US up nearly 30%. Tariff diversion didn't rebuild American manufacturing. It built Indian and Vietnamese manufacturing. The capital didn't come home. It just found a new zip code. Vietnam is walking a razor's edge. While its export surge reshaped the bilateral trade architecture, it now faces the risk of being labeled a transshipment hub for Chinese goods. In 2026, Hanoi is playing both sides, utilizing its dual position to capture trade flows that Washington and Beijing are both trying to control. If the goal was to make America the manufacturing floor of the world again, what does a $1.24 trillion goods deficit, 77,000 lost jobs, and a weakened dollar tell you about who the trade war actually served? In January, we mapped how tariffs fractured trust with allies. 1 year of data now shows the structural consequence. When $50 trillion begins repricing American assets, the dollar slide is part of that calculation. These aren't temporary trade routes. Supply chains take 3 to 5 years to build, but they take a generation to move. The factories that opened in India and Vietnam in 2025 are not closing in 2026. The positions are locked. The trade routes hardened in 2025 are now the architecture of a parallel system, one that wasn't designed in Washington. Supply chains don't wait for politics to catch up. If you value this evidence-driven analysis, consider supporting us on Buy Me a Coffee. Because in the end, capital doesn't have loyalty. It has logic. Steve, signing off.